Priya Ganness-Nanton is a young social activist whose causes range over a wide swath of concerns, both in and for Trinidad and Tobago, as well as regarding countries elsewhere in this hemisphere. She's been deeply involved in the activities having to do with Venezuela and with Cuba, and with farmers and fishermen's organizations across this country, and with opposition to the proposed aluminum smelter projects. She's now, however, occupied gainfully in the Ministry of Trade, Industry, Investment and Communication, working closely with Minister Vasant Barath. And that's just the tip of the iceberg about who this dynamo is. Good to have you.
Thank you.
On this segment of Conversations With. And I wanted to start by asking you if there is a waking moment when you're not thinking about something, involved in something, promoting something, pushing something, trying to raise somebody's level of consciousness about something.
No, all of my time, I could say that honestly, all of my time, all of my waking time, there's always something else. Even when I lay down to sleep, sometimes I have to get back up to make a note or remember to do this, remember to do that. Because there's so much things that need to be done. We live in a time where so much things do need to be done, and the people who can should. And yeah, and I try to make a difference as much as I can.
You were saying this just before we started that you made a credit card payment at 2 in the morning.
2 in the morning, I was at a function. I had to go to another function. I was like, oh my goodness, I have to make a credit card payment. I had to go into the ATM, take it out, go put it in. And yeah, so I don't have, my time is always, I work long hours. And I am at my desk for long hours. I love my job, and I see on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, how much things get done within the Ministry of Trade. And I think that my personal life has been put on the back burner somewhat.
Let's take that statement, I love my job. And does it matter where you work at any point in time, that you love what you do?
It is very important to me. I didn't want a job. I wanted that job. I wanted to work with Minister Vasant Barath.
No, I'm talking about, generally speaking, when you were with the Cuban embassy.
I wanted that job.
Yeah, right. That's what I mean.
Yeah, so when I was at Venezuelan embassy, I wanted that job, social and political secretary to the ambassador.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you sort of gear yourself up to like what you do, regardless of where you are?
No, it's the opposite. I wouldn't put myself in a situation where you had to, I say, oh, this is what I want, and I'll seek it out.
Yeah.
And if it's for me, it will come to me.
Yeah. So you don't just take a job and then struggle with
No. I can't do that. You see, I commit 100%. I can't go into sales. I tell people that I can't commit to sales, to make up money or profit, right? But if I had to raise money for a cause, the sky is the limit. I can sell. I have to believe in it. I have to push it.
What do you think is the difference
with
that? I mean, so your approach to raising funds for a cause as opposed to being a salesman. And are there people who, if they get to know you in one of these spheres, would say, you could be a good member of my team?
Yeah, sales.
Sort of these insurance.
Can I get passionate about selling insurance?
Yeah.
I doubt it. Not at this point in my life. About selling cars? I doubt it. Not at this point in my life. Which is not to say maybe further down the line, but not right now. Not right now. Yeah, exactly. Life is about phases and about embracing it, each one. My getting into the Cuban embassy, know how I got that job? I walked into the Cuban embassy. We had a solidarity meeting. And he had just given me his card. The ambassador had given me his card. And the phone is ringing and nobody's around. So I picked it up. I said, thank you for calling the Cuban embassy. And they were asking, I know I should not have, but I did. Yeah. There was nobody else there. And they asked for the spelling of his name. And I just read it out. I said, okay, thank you. And put it down. And he came and he stood in front of me while I was doing it. He's like, I need you here.
Somebody like you should be in this office.
Yeah, I need you here. And that's where it started. We were, Cuba honored Trinidad and Tobago at the 31st Fiesta del Fuego in 2011.
11 it was.
Yeah. And so I was working with the Cuba Solidarity and Friends of Cuba. A delegation went across. And he told me, when you come back, you're coming right back here. And so said, so done.
Yeah. Let me just, before I get to that though, you say that your orphanage is, what's it, Jesus
Cares Cottage in Arima.
Yeah.
Laris and Gavin Ali. I don't, the story?
No.
It was in the media. They were in Tobago, and she is Tobagonian. They have one child together, and when the child was sick, at the hospital, that's when they saw how people were leaving children in the hospital. There were these children who had been abandoned in hospitals. And Laris, I guess, is a woman after my own heart. She was traumatized by this, and that's how it started. And then it kind of expanded to the point where I think there was as much as 75 women, battered women and children as well, living in this home. They were seeking to have a bigger space, seeking interventions. Now they do have their own space up in Arima. And I think for Christmas last year, Christmas was 19 of them. You know, and it's good work. It's not an orphanage, really. It's a home. And she makes that distinction. That's why I love her.
That's the place up on the hill, up going up by Holy Cross College.
I don't know where Holy Cross.
Yeah, but it's up on a hill.
I think. Yeah, no.
No, it's not that one.
No, I can get you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get you a picture. I should.
You get me to go up there and
yes, you should go. We should go. We'll have lunch.
I'm trying to get me involved.
And they'll sing.
Yeah.
Children are important, you know. I feel like if I had to say anything to anybody, it's like, you know, find a child and mentor. Make sure on your speed dial you have at least one person under 10 or under 15. Who are you, you know, offering some kind of guidance to? People who want to talk about the youth and the youth and the youth. Well, how many youths do you know?
And do you engage with?
Yeah, and really and truly, when they talk about old people, I have people, well, you know that. I have some like Michael Alls and Professor Gurvan. You know, people who I could call and talk to on the phone. I have younger people. I have a little partner there. His name is Bradley. He's 4.
You used to be able to call and talk to.
That is correct.
Both of these eminent gentlemen are no more. So you find that you have to replace people like that, or there are so many in your pantheon of heroes that. I actually
I don't know. I'm one of those people. I really have a challenge dealing with death. I know that.
It's inevitable.
I know that.
There's certain inevitability.
It still doesn't make it easier.
Yeah, it doesn't.
You know? But I honestly know for a fact that death only hurts the living, right? They are in a better place, and they've done real service in this country, and they have left a huge mark. Michael Alls was really my mentor in the early part of it. You know, he would say things to me like, Priya, if everybody likes you, you're doing it wrong. You know, you have to. If you're really making a difference, if you're really, cutting a new path, you have to have some kind of disturbance along the way. I really miss Michael, though.
Well, we had one big falling out. I mean, I'd known him for a long time. Since
Michael falls out with everybody.
Yeah.
That is who he is. Yeah. He falls out with me as well, and I tell him, you don't have a choice. You have to love me. I'm Priya.
Because we disagreed fundamentally over Grenada, you know, his support of what was happening there and my opposition to it at the time I was working.
I heard those stories.
Yes.
I heard those stories. No, but again, a lot of people, I think that my love for people is, I love a wide cross-section of this country, people involved with different causes, different political parties, different whatever, and, good people who just believe in different things and maybe go about things a different way. And sometimes you have to sit back and watch them, get into it, and you pick and choose if you're going to choose a side, or just ride it out, because I don't really, I'm very, very vocal about favorites. I have no problem saying who my favorites are, who my favorites are not. But sometimes when 2 of my favorites get into it, I can't choose a favorite.
You can't.
No,
yeah.
I can't.
And sometimes it's difficult. And sometimes there are people who don't have the ability to do that. You take a side based on the fact that you like this person or you like this organization.
Wrong is wrong is wrong is wrong. Wrong is wrong. And right is right. So even if I don't like you and you're doing something right, then you have my support.
Right. And this is a good point at which, I think
oh my goodness,
to ask you this question about, because for a lot of the things that you stand for, let me just go through a little bit of them. A member of the social activist group, the Rights Action, and that goes back to the late great Norris Junarine. The Chatham Captiville Environmental Protection Group. That's the sort of those people form the essence of the opposition to the then proposed smelter in Chatham.
And the social movement.
Gumti Singh and people like that, whom I imagine you would have gotten to know. The Labrador Concerned Citizens United, South Oropuch Concerned Association, the Claxton Bay Resource Group, and those were the people who stood up against Issa Steel or that proposal. And then, well, of course, the Fishermen's Association, FITON, the Toko Foundation, the Trinidad and Tobago Citizens Agenda Network.
Sheila Solomon.
Again, the late, great Sheila Solomon there. CAFRA, Habitat for Humanity. you know, for all those causes that you stand for, and still the youth advocate movement. And there are some people who are saying, how could somebody with this finely tuned, you know, highly pitched level of social consciousness and activity find comfort working for an administration such as this? I'm sure you get those comments because this administration is seen to be anti-people, you know, the rest of it. I get those kinds of remarks myself.
Well,
I've been getting them for 4 years.
You know, Michael is always saying, you know, monkey doesn't know which tree to climb, right?
Yeah.
And with my personality, I don't really have time for those conversations. I believe in making a difference, and I think that I have been making a difference, and I believe that I continue to make a difference. I don't, this job that I have as Minister Barrett's Senior Secretary, I work in the Ministry of Trade, Industry, Investment and Communications. It's a huge, huge, huge ministry.
It's a super ministry.
And he is a superhuman, right? He does a lot. He's also Minister in the Ministry of Finance and the Economy.
Dealing with Caribbean Airlines,
and
particularly.
It's a lot, right? He works really, really hard. He is a doer. And there's not a week that passes that I don't see him accomplish something. And being able to see that, you can't be all things to all people. And he's a man with a list. I'm a woman with a list. You have to check it off. This is what you want. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What do you want to accomplish? What have you accomplished in the last year? What are you working on for this month? Do you have a work plan? My minister has a work plan. My minister has a list of achievements, and that is something that I respect and I admire. When the comment about this administration, I don't get involved in those.
But people haven't been challenging you.
I'm too busy. I do get it. I'm not going to say no. I do get it, especially coming out of the creative sector.
Yeah.
But no, you see, because I've continued to work, I've continued to try, and what happens when you're involved in activism and with NGOs, right? Sometimes you need access to things, and the people who are in a position to give it to you, whether is funding for the Fonzerman's Reforestation Community Project up in St. Anne's, you know, or whatever, Trinidad and Tobago Cancer Society. Sometimes you're not in a position when you're in this sector, in this NGOs, right?
Yeah.
You're not in a position to have access to it. You don't know the right people. And then in the ministry, there are all these businesses who want to make a difference. They want to get involved in youth. They want to get involved with sick children or with sick people. They want it and they don't know. So so I am in the process. I form connections. I'm still doing that. I've always been networking. I think it's a real skill, and I think I'm good at that. That's one of my skills, networking, bringing people together. You yourself would know that. Nothing brings people together like a pot of fish broth, right? In National Food Crop Farmers, we did it. We did it in Labre, you know, and food is something that brings people together. Food security, that's something that Norris was felt very strong about, and that's something that I continue to carry. You know, let's sit and eat, let's sit and chat. And I've continued that, you know, come and have coffee with me and let's see how we can really do something going forward. Look, this young lady, Sue-Ann Bramble, you know, Sue-Ann Bramble, she's one of the top models in this country right now. She's right now in Washington receiving an award.
To hold your point, we'll be back in a moment. So you were talking about this young lady named Sue-Ann Bramble.
Okay, I feel like
she's a model, but with a cause, you were saying.
No, Sue-Ann Bramble is somebody who is a young person within the creative sector. Film, fashion, and music fall under the Ministry of Trade, under Creative TT, and she's one of the people who is really taking it forward. There's a young designer, Sean Griffith Perez, not so young in age, but young in business. And he's receiving an award in Washington. You know, and these things that I see that we are making a difference. He was awarded last year. He was recognized last year, and he was unable to go. He didn't have a U.S. visa. He wasn't able to access the funding and this kind of thing. The Ministry of Trade got involved. you know. So it can't be that...
And provided the wherewithal for him to go, helped him...
That is correct. Both of them.
Assisted in getting the visa for him.
So I'd say it's one, but I mean, it's not none.
Yeah.
You have to understand.
And it's very important sometimes. I mean, you would know that from all this work you do. Sometimes making a difference in the life of one person or for one person.
Absolutely.
You know,
I believe that, and I see that. I see that. Yeah.
Yeah. You're talking about we're talking about making a difference, and you know, the lady who just recently was recognized by the U.S. State Department for seeking to make a difference in Trinidad and Tobago regarding human trafficking. Mm-hmm. You know her. You know about those exploits at all.
I saw it in the
Ms.
paper.
Charmaine Gandhi, something or the other. Yeah. So she's not somebody who's come across sort of your radar. Just yet.
I sometimes read papers when they're 2 weeks old.
Yeah, but that issue of this question about human trafficking in Trinidad and Tobago, or the extent to which Trinidad and Tobago is involved in human trafficking, that
hasn't come across my radar. That's not one of the things. I'm not one of those people who, you know, I pick up every single cause and I run with it. You know, I know that in order to really make a difference in one, you have to put concentrated effort going forward. So certainly something like that is disturbing. I was involved with the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. They did a project with the connection to HIV and HIV detection in children. Yeah. Right? As how it relates to child sexual abuse. And when I got involved in that is something that caught my interest, and I got involved in it, but it was way too emotional for me. I was so hurt by the stories, I was unable to be productive in it. So something like that, you know, causes like that are so emotional, that affect people on that level, I would have to be very cautious.
Yeah, so what is the connection between the discovery of HIV in children
who are not born with it?
Yeah, and
it has to do with the increase of child sexual abuse.
Child sexual abuse.
Yeah, it was a pilot project that was done in 3 communities. And I started it, and I don't think I was able to complete it. It was too much for me. Okay.
You just said something which I wanted to come to ask you about this. You know, the notion that you know, there's no end of causes.
No, there certainly has to be. I only have 24 hours in the day. So it's not like somebody can come to me and say, Priya, I need help with so, or I need you to do this, I need you to do that. They come to me. And sometimes I have to say, well, I physically cannot, you know, because family is very important to me. I work long hours, but I need to make time to see my family. And, you know, I'm involved in different things. And to be productive, you know, and I keep saying that, to be productive is not just to say that you're involved in something, but it's to continue to be productive and have results. Productivity, I measure productivity by results. You have a list of 10 things to do. If you only did 1 or 2, then you need to put more energy into that to be able to achieve 8 or 9 or 10. You know, so I'm not in this and in this and in this and in everything. And no, not at all, not at all. Because then you're not going to have results.
All right. So let's go back to Norris Ryan. You know, at one of the funeral events for him, or one of the cremation events for him, I remember. Again, she's an associate of yours to some extent, Ms. who writes in the paper, Attila Springer. Mm-hmm. She had to be restrained because she got a bit overcome with her emotions and was shouting above people. I think Mr. Bratt was talking then. I think he was still Minister of Food Production at the time. It was in the yard at the Curep. Mm-hmm. Catholic Church, was it?
Yeah, and right a few houses away from where he lived.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm. Food security for Norris, you know, because that is an issue that he campaigned for hard. I mean, up to the day that he died, and you know, so the question of food security, I think some commitment, if it weren't made, it was implied, because it is one of the objectives of this administration to move us closer, if not to get us there, on this question of food security in Trinidad and Tobago. Where are we, you would say?
That's an interesting question, because I didn't realize you were going there with it when you raised the point about Attila. My minister, Minister Barras, worked really, really hard within that ministry, and it's no secret, like, a lot of the farmers still refer to him as the best Minister of Agriculture in the history of this country. That's quite huge. And again, you know, I say that, like, this is your checklist and this is your productivity. You have a game plan and you're going forward and you're able to go through. Things are not instantaneous. Things don't happen overnight, right? It takes a lot of work. And I think he laid a good groundwork. He did the groundwork. And where it is now, I honestly don't know. That is the honest truth. I think within the National Food Crop Farmers, Terence or Glenn would certainly be following that, and that information for me is a phone call away.
Terence Beddoe, you're referring to?
Terence Haywood.
Terence Haywood. Okay.
President.
It's the other one. Yeah.
The
All
president.
Right. Mr. Beddoe is in Fishermen and Friends of the Sea. All right.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. But on the philosophy of food security, what does it mean in your mind for us in Trinidad and Tobago? What does it mean? I know the government has one plank on it, in which this administration is working, is to reduce the food import bill by so much per annum.
Incrementally, and have us growing and this kind of thing. Different initiatives were set out. I think in theory things come across a certain way. Like, we can have a plan, but in the actual implementation, they ran into a lot of problems. I think on both sides, on a ground level and from a policy level. I think that there was a lot of challenges, and you know, and simple things that can be addressed really, and paperwork and bureaucracy really get a simple thing like, you know, clearing what is that, the sluice to open the pump in Arangwes so that we don't get flooded out. My farmers don't get flooded out every single year and lose crops. You know, it's simple things. We have in Boabande, the Boabande Farmers Association, which is a subset of the National Food Crop Farmers Association. They have a problem with the squatters coming in and encroaching. So it's different issues specific to different communities. And they do fruits up there. Arangwes is more the food basket, a greater variety.
The garden, he used to call it. Used to call it. I did a program live from inside there one day, you know.
That's the cabbage photo we have. That is the iconic photo of Norris now. The one with the cabbage in the background, isn't it?
Yes.
So, you know, again, it's not that it's one. It's not a one-size-fits-all to fit the problem. Different areas are better for different crops. Different areas have different challenges. Some people need water, some people need drainage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's about really making the concerted effort to have the right people on the ground.
But I'll tell you something that stumped me and caused some confusion on this whole business about the extent to which we have appreciable, substantial agricultural production in Trinidad and Tobago, food crop farming in Trinidad and Tobago. It was in about 2004, 2005, and there was this row that threatened to disrupt relations between Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados significantly over this question about the arrest of two Barbados fishermen looking for flying fish off Tobago and that kind of, and it led to a diplomatic and political row, and then that caused some disruption in the export of food crops from Trinidad to Barbados, and it was huge. So, you know, thousands of pounds of pumpkin and other things were being stuck in the warfare in Trinidad because they couldn't go to Barbados. And it said to me that sometimes we lament needlessly. If you had so much of a negative impact on food crop grown in Trinidad and Tobago not getting to Barbados, it meant that, you know, somebody was underselling our capacity at that time?
Well, I was one of the delegates at the Assembly of Caribbean People held in Barbados, and we had an agricultural forum. And, you know, it's more than just one factor in something like that. It's that to trade within the Caribbean, first to trade with our Caribbean neighbors, it's not easy. Like, it's not that easy.
Right.
So that is able to happen because how many cargo ships do we have going up there as well? You know, like, at the end of the day, if somebody really wanted to get around it, are there the options available to get around it?
Yeah.
There's a media story going on, but at the end of the day, there are people on the ground who would have wanted the product.
Yeah, no, but what I meant is that the volumes that were being talked about that were suffering, you know, and
I've seen it with the watermelon
livelihoods, yes, you know, but it gave me a sense that we were producing in volumes here that you didn't get the sense when we lament the lack of production of local food crop here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well,
as a
Barbados is quite small.
Right, yes, but at the same time, if people were lamenting, how much production was being lost, it said that there was more going on than sometimes you get in the narrative about.
That's one of the things that I find, like, for me, has always been a little disturbing. That my farmers, we have production, and sometimes they don't buy because the imported stuff is cheaper or it looks prettier.
Yeah.
And our stuff would be healthier because, we know what's in our air, what's in our water, what's in our soil. Sometimes when you import stuff, you don't know how it's being treated.
Right, how it is grown, how it is cultivated.
Exactly.
The system of labor, because there's a whole other movement now inside of that talking about fair trading and fair farming, so what goes into the production of this thing you're buying and so on.
Yeah.
But we'll take a break and come back in a moment. Alrighty, watching Conversations with, my guest is Priya Ganness-Nanton. Take this issue about your connections, your networking, and some of the issues and the causes and the agencies you're involved with. Let's say the Cuba solidarity of Trinidad and Tobago. So you support some of you support developments in Cuba. And you live in Trinidad and Tobago.
I support a greater unification of the Caribbean and CARICOM territories. That's what I want to see, and I know where you're going to go with that.
Tell me.
No. So it's not about being anti-anything.
Yeah.
And I always make that point. It's not about, because I'm in support of you, doesn't mean I'm automatically not in support of somebody else.
Yeah.
It means that I'm in support of you, right? So I've been to Cuba. Cuba is absolutely magnificent. It's beautiful. I fell asleep on the bus going from Havana down to Santiago de Cuba. Woke up, the land was flat with just acres and acres of agriculture. Fell asleep, woke up, and it was the same thing. An hour later, they produce a lot of food, They are self-sufficient in terms of food production. I mean, that's admirable.
Okay, and that would be a definition for you for what food security is.
Yeah,
they
correct.
don't have to
That
rely on import stuff, and
if nothing could come into that country, they would live. They would not starve.
And their food import bill is zero.
I don't know how much it is, but it's not. It's nothing like ours for sure.
Imports would have to be of what is of necessity.
Yeah. Things that they can't manufacture, drugs and this kind of thing, medicine.
Yeah. But here's my question though: the extent to which going over this list of organizations and causes that are alive and well in Trinidad and Tobago. Say what you want about their methods, about their politics. That's one thing. But the fact that you have such a healthy NGO sector in Trinidad and Tobago, which my sense is that you don't have in a society like Cuba. About our politics, there is no real. Well, I would say democracy. You might say, well, that's a definition. There are different definitions of democracy. You don't have political choice in a society like Cuba. How does one, make? And there are a lot of people who do that, who have those connections. People in Trinidad and Tobago who reserve the right to pick up a placard any day and stand up on any street corner and protest anything that they want.
Correct.
You can't do that in Cuba.
That is correct. Yeah. In everything, there's so many different facets of so many things. And Cuba was a very interesting experience for me, working at the Cuban Embassy. Being a part of the movement and working at the Cuban Embassy was my first experience in diplomatic corps. For me as a person, me personally, I learned a lot, protocol and security, and it was quite exciting. We hosted, Trinidad was host to the Cuba CARICOM Summit in 2011.
Yes.
Yeah. So, you know.
Or 2012, whichever. Yeah.
2011, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, me as a person, I was able to grow professionally, personally, with that experience. To me, it's not about whether Fidel Castro is a communist or there. It was not. I didn't get in there because of politics per se, political party politics or that kind of thing. I got in there because there was something they needed that I felt that I could do for them, you know. And in my time there, my ambassador, who I adore, he's also an August born like myself,
yeah.
right? Humberto Rivera Rosario, really a great man, career diplomat, and that the experience of being in that embassy and, you know, building solidarity, and really for me it's about strengthening relations. When I was there, my time there, you know that was all these solidarity activities. You know, people who studied in Cuba, people who Cubans resident in the country, the labor movement, solidarity, but people who wanted to know about the history of Cuba, people who wanted to travel to Cuba as tourists for medical tourism. So it was really about building that relationship on that level for me, right? The experience of being able to go to Cuba was also exceptional.
You know, one gets the sense that you know, if someone doesn't support the system that is at work in Cuba, you get referred to as you're not a progressive because I
don't know.
And sometimes it's given sometimes the intellectual heft of some of the people who are supporters of the Cuban way of life. And it is difficult to go up against them on the basis of the fact that, you know, so they don't, ordinary Cuban citizens don't enjoy some of the freedoms if you like, that exist in other societies in the region, such as in Trinidad and Tobago, and that is a basis on which some people take aside. And
I've heard that a lot, you know, that the lack of choice and the lack of freedom for Cubans, but Cuba is a very, very safe place. You know, we have all this choice in Trinidad, and we're not very safe. We live behind burglar proof. So
we live in self-imposed jails.
Yeah, so, you know, like, if you only look at what is wrong, people look at Trinidad and they say we have so much choice and, you know, we have all this, it's bright lights, you know. But, you know, crime is really a scary thing right now. And violence. We see violence, intimate partner violence, domestic violence. We see that. There's none of that in Cuba.
I like that term, intimate partner violence. So that's another way of referring to domestic violence.
Yeah, it's not just about husband and wife anymore. We have a lot of young people, young relationships where there's violence, you know, and that doesn't happen in Cuba. You know, that does not happen in Cuba. There's a billboard in Cuba where it says however many children slept on the streets last night in the world, and not one of them was Cuban. You know, things like that. Like when you're sick in Cuba, the older people, they go to your home with medicine. We don't have that. I see people, I'm late for work sometimes, helping old ladies cross the street, helping old men get into the bus because the bus stop is right by RBTT. We live in a society where we have all this choice, and we should be so much. We have all these TV stations, all these radio stations, all these clothing stores, all these places. We have the Avenue, and we don't care about each other. So, you know, when people, as fast as you can criticize something about Cuba, you can raise something up about Cuba.
Yes, there's lots to be admired, but for a lot of people, the fundamental principle about people's freedom of choice, that doesn't exist. And in some what you referred to there, I've heard people say that you don't see any homeless people. Well, they're not allowed to be because they're taken up and put somewhere. Mm-hmm. And some of the behaviors and actions that, to the extent that they exist in other societies such as ours, mm-hmm. they aren't allowed, and they are legislated against, or action is taken against people's wills and so on. And not that I'm necessarily want to come across as a Cuba basher, but I'm trying to
be fair, you know, and that's something that I will never, because I'm for you. If I say, you know, I like Andy Johnson, I'm not going to close my eyes if Andy Johnson is doing something that, you know.
Right.
So at the end of the day, Cuba has
blinded by your.
Yeah, I'm not going to say Cuba is the greatest country in the world. I think Trinidad is actually the greatest country in the world. I say that all the time. I think Trinidad, with all our shortcomings, with all our shortfalls, with all our challenges, I wouldn't like to be, you know, living anywhere
else.
Trinidad is home, and I am so proud to be Trinidad.
So what are your conversations then with some of our compatriots who, at the slightest provocation, and this is not to say that there isn't enough reason for some of us to want to pack up and go, or want to keep packing up and going, and my sense is that that is an option that more and more people are taking or contemplating, even as we speak.
They're free to do so, you know. A friend was telling me opinions are like belly buttons. Everybody have one. Everybody has a view. Everybody, and you're entitled to a view. We live in Trinidad, and that is our freedom. We can hold a placard in the streets anytime we want, male, female, it doesn't matter.
But it's the person who made that comment, was he suggesting that maybe everybody doesn't need to have an opinion, or everybody shouldn't?
No. It's just that this is the time that, and we are so free to talk. Anybody can write in the paper. If you have time to really sit and look at the opinions read the opinions on Facebook, you know, it's really interesting as a good pulse of the country to what people are actually saying, you know. And
now, how do you discount what you should take on conscientiously and seriously, as opposed to...
I'm a researcher, right? I'm a researcher, and people are my greatest library. You know, I would ask you, Andy, do you know so? What do you think about so? You know, physical, that personal interaction counts for something. Rather than read something in a book, anybody can Google somebody.
Yeah.
You know, you can Google me, you get something on me. Yeah. But then when you actually get to know me, you know, it adds a different slant to what you would have read. And that applies to anybody. But the people who want to pack up and leave, all right. You know, when you're not vested in the country, when you don't really... I had a great childhood. You know, I had a magnificent childhood. I wish my childhood for every single child.
What did it consist?
I am the second of 4. I grew up in Point Fortin. My mother still lives there. It's a beautiful house with a beautiful yard. You know, I ate a lot of
in Tiché or in...
Clifton Hill. Clifton Hill proper, up the hill from the beach. And, you know, I had a...
The privileged part or the ordinary people part of Clifton Hill?
I would say the privileged part, definitely. The camp houses.
One of your parents worked high up in the oil field?
No, my dad was at Dunlop, and my mom was a teacher at the Point Fortin. She's an English teacher.
Okay.
So they got that house, we moved in there, but we lived in different houses within Clifton Hill. And then we moved into the house with the family home that we are at now.
So you lived through the industrial turmoil at Dunlop then?
Well, we were always very sheltered, you know. I always tell people, I feel like I hatched in like 2006, you know.
After that was a significant industrial relations event in the country, Dunlop versus the trade union.
I mean, my father speaks about that all the time. Like, well, recently he used to say, like your partner, Ansel Roger, would wait until my car was passing, coming home for lunch, and be like, he is the capitalist, he is the problem. My father would blow his horn and continue driving, you know. So again, that's what I say, you know. You have all these people that you like, and then when they get into it, you just have to step back. But you were making up. I was telling you about Clifton Hill.
Yes.
Growing up, best childhood ever.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't have. We grew up safe. I don't know about to be afraid that somebody's going to break into your house. I didn't grow up with parents fighting or violence or anything like that. There's certainly no child sexual abuse or any chance of that in how we were brought up. My parents are excellent parents. I look at that and I feel so privileged. You know, when you give thanks in the morning for something, I always still give thanks for that. You know, I'm a product of my entire life experiences to this point. And they are part of that. I look at people who carry all this baggage from childhood and I wish I could take it away. You know, and then I tell people, mentor a child, find a child, make sure they have at least one person. You know, you can be that one person to tell them you could be anything you want to be. Don't let people get into your head, telling you can't be stuff. My parents always said that.
Mentoring is not easy.
It is not, and it is a emotional commitment. It is an expensive emotional commitment. You know, you
that one has to make.
Yeah, you have to give all or don't give nothing. Don't give half. You know, and I honestly believe that. If you're going to make a commitment to a child, don't give half. Give it or don't give it. You know, because you don't want to damage. You don't want to hurt. You don't want to leave that hole that you give up a false promise. So if you have the time, make the time. You make time to do so much things in life. You know, when you really want to do something, you make the time to do it.
You make the time to do it.
Yeah. When something is important, you make the time to do it, you know. It could be, I have to get to Moruga from Port of Spain at 3 o'clock in the morning. You make the time if you have to do it. If it's important enough, you make the time. And mentoring is like that. You decide that, you know something, the awesome childhood that I have, I want to do everything I can to pay that forward. Or if you didn't have an awesome childhood, you know, I want to make sure that this child, you know, doesn't have a terrible childhood like I had.
All right, when we come back, I want to get into that a little more, talking about, you know, from on the other side, what is this question we have about the deficit of role models and figures of admiration in the country. Mentorship, you know, that was a major sort of initiative of a former Minister of National Security, to the point where there are those who were looking in and looking on at what he was seeking to do and thought that that was not going to address the crime problem that we had in the country, and he didn't get to see it through. But it is a hugely important initiative for changing behaviors, you think? And tie that into the fact that we have this debate going on about the fact that we have a deficit of heroes, of role models in this society. I don't agree with it, but
I certainly don't agree with it. I have so many people in my life, from a very little girl till now a big girl. You know, I have so many people that I admire and I respect, and I feel so privileged to have known them. I mean, my first role models were my parents.
Yeah.
You know, and that is a very real thing. When you meet me, if my parents walk into this room, you'd be like, oh, you're Priya's mom, oh, you're Priya's dad. You know, you see the personality. And, you know, like Gail Alibokas, Stephen Alibokas' grandpa, my grandparents are awesome people. You know, like I come from a small family. My mom is one of 14, my dad is one of 11. And I have lots of cousins, you know, so you don't get to take yourself too seriously when you have that many, you know. So, you know, So
what are family gatherings like?
Epic. Epic. You know what's happening? In July, next 2 weeks, my grandpa is turning 96. Last year he turned 95, and oh my goodness, he was so overcome. You know, he feels so blessed to meet his great-grandchildren. His children are there, his grandchildren are there, his great-grandchildren. We all come together. It's in Cedrus, and it's so... Family's a powerful thing, to look around and see your connection, your blood connection in the world. Last year, April, my mom's eldest sister and eldest brother, they celebrated 100 years of marriage. He got married on the Saturday, she got married on the Sunday 50 years ago, 50 and 50.
So your grandfather still has most of his all
everything.
His
he will pick up, he will go down and dig in the garden and pick stuff from the trees and everything.
So to quote Professor Ken Ramshan, he's a Cedrosian who came to Point Fortin. You know, so people like Dr. Raphael Sebastian and people like that. That's I'm just imagining that they are part of that wider circle of
yeah. Well, I know them.
Yeah.
They know my, you know, and that's when you come from such a big family, people meet you, they've never met you before, and they know your grandfather, they know your mother, and then you become family as well. That's the awesome thing about the Deep South.
Yeah. So come back to this question about role models. Why is it said that we don't have? Because that's one of the laments from a lot of people. We don't have enough role models.
Because I have this opinion, and it's all mine, like my belly button, that the people who complain the loudest, you know, like the people who busy and who trying to make a difference, we don't have time to complain. You know what I mean? We don't have the time, like that time, to sit and write every single thing that is wrong. From the top, go down, the stoopsers, the people who just stand up in the corner and stoops. The stoopsers in the corner, right? The people who just stoops in the corner, they know everything that's wrong, and what you Andy doing wrong, and what Priya doing wrong, and what everybody doing wrong. And what are you doing right? You're just talking about what everybody is doing wrong. good job, you know. So I'm real. You notice that, Ed? You don't see people like just going on and on about all the good things in their life. You don't. You see people complain about all the terrible things.
Have you been told, or have you sought to find out what accounts for somebody's absolute positivism? You know, your positiveness quotient. You seem to have a lot of it.
Ever since I was little, though, I was one of those children who would go and lie down in the grass and look at the clouds and be like, oh my God, it's magnificent. You know, and I can still do that now when I have people that age. You know? Older people, like, we lose sight of, I don't know, like, it's become a crime to be happy. You know, it's like, why is she so happy? Because I'm happy. What's wrong with you? You know, people who've never really been sad, you know, never really been sad. They don't know how to really be happy.
You know, I'm laughing because a lot of times somebody asks me, so how are you always smiling? I said, maybe because I'm a fool. I don't know.
No. Why are you smiling? Because I have dimples. God gave me dimples. I have to share my dimples with the world. But role models, going back to it, I have been really, oh my goodness, really blessed. You know, I started, after my marriage fell apart, the first person I reached out to was Brother Resistance and Rapso. Rapso is about positivity, the power of the word. And
the Rapso styling.
Yeah, no, but the power of the word is not there's no kind of, not even negative, but music that has to be censored. Rapso is not something that has to be censored. It is played anywhere, anytime. You could play it in church, you could play it in a nursery. You never have to censor it. It is good, positive messages, and that's where I got involved. And from there, it went to the National Food Crop Farmers' Rights Action Group, and, you know, people who really took me under their wing as a woman in that movement, you know, and as a young woman in that
movement. Much younger then.
Much younger than?
Then, at that than now.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't feel like so long ago, you know.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like so long ago.
And you didn't have any abundance of, you didn't feel the need to employ any abundance of caution of you know, getting involved with you know, some of these old lions and war horses and so on.
I'm a lion on my own right. I'm pretty fierce, you know. In the Cuban embassy, they always said, muy fiera, you know, mujer muy fiera. And I'm not easily intimidated. You know, I can stand my ground. And that's something my parents...
You can hold your own.
Yeah, I'm not afraid. You have to come really good, especially if I'm coming from a point of truth. If I'm coming from a point of lack of knowledge and I don't know what's going on, then I'm intimidated. But if I know what I'm standing up for, on what you're coming at me with, then it's different. But people like Norris Ryan, you know, I was devastated, you know. I was devastated. When I got that phone call, it was a Friday. When I got that phone call, and I thought it was a car accident.
Yeah, I mean, it happened so weird. I mean, the night before, he was seen in the news trying to keep people from blows, people who were being plan-asked somewhere up in the Blanchard's Road, and he was in the middle of that trying to break cutlasses, and by the time he got up next morning, you know, he was reported to have died. And yeah, it was just that kind of...
You see, and this is why I make the point about, you know, making time for the things that are important. Make your list. You know, my job is very important to me. I love what I do. My family is very, very, very important to me. And I have to make time to be there with them. You know, especially as you get older, it just occurred to me that, you know, as I get older, my mother is also getting older. I just think that she stays the same. She looks the same, you know. She looks like my sister. It doesn't say much for me, but it says something about her, right? And, you know, like, make time for what is important. Norris, the number one sacrifice I think that Norris made personally was sleep. You know, he pushed himself way too hard. He tried to be, he had to be so many things.
Because he was a man on a mission.
Yeah. And
on several missions.
I felt actually very, very betrayed by his passing. I felt that, you know, you make this promise that we are on the front line and we are doing this and we promise this, you know, and you are the voice. You are the voice. That is a privilege. That is an honor. You have to respect that. And to respect the message, you are the messenger. You have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself. And he didn't. And I went into a real, real dark space, you know. I still feel it, you know.
What do you think he would think about your associationship with this administration?
Absolutely. He would say, like, I think about that all the time. Whenever I have those challenging moments in the office, you know, I sit down and I have a picture of Norris. And I have a T-shirt of Norris that I wear. I wore it all over Cuba.
Yeah.
And, you know, what would he say? And we don't commit. He always said that. As Leo people, he's also August born, right? Lions. You know, we don't commit halfway. I didn't make a commitment with the Ministry of Trade to walk away if somebody didn't like me, or if I got in a little trouble or I did something wrong. Life is about learning. None of us are perfect. And if we were perfect, we wouldn't be human. And so, you know, I'm not here to be without flaw. And when I do make mistakes, or when I encounter challenges in the office, and I think, what would Norris say? You know, he'd be like, just remember, he believed in Vasant Bharat. Eh? Norris Deonarine believed in Vasant
And they had a connection, which is clear, which was demonstrable.
You know, and that's why, you know, and I'm not sure how much information I would actually say. I don't know what is the process here, but, you know.
None of it will be edited.
Oh. Vasant, my minister, also had a heart attack, right? He had a heart attack a few years back. And Norris passed away from a massive heart attack. Yeah. And I always feel like, see how I think that what you put into your body is what comes out of your body, right? I do eat a lot of processed food. I do eat a lot of long dead food. I'm very alive. You know, I eat colorful food. I'm colorful. You know, what you put in is what you're going to get out. And part of my promise to Norris, because Norris believed in Vasant Bharat, as a person to make a difference, as a role model, as somebody with a mission, somebody with a purpose. And, you know, I encourage him to eat. I encourage him to take care of himself. You know, like...
This is Minister Bharat.
This is my minister. You know, and sometimes I look at him and I see that he's tired because he's running from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. And, you know, I stand there and I'll be like, you know, drink some tea now. Have some tea. You want Earl Grey? You want peppermint? You want a mix of the two? You want Indian chai? You know what? And that is, and that little thing, like just trying to make sure that he's taking care of his health, is every time it comes out of my mouth, I remember Norris. Every single time. Every single time.
All right. I promised myself to ask you about your cause for 2014, which is the Trinidad and
Tobago Cancer Society. If you all don't know about them, look them up. They just had the Men in Heels to raise awareness of cancer in men. You know, cancer is something, it's so disrespectful.
Don't you have men running in high heel shoes?
Say again?
Somehow I miss the fun of that. I miss what is intended.
You should have gone and tried it.
That's what I mean. I miss the fun of...
We can organize ones especially
not
for you,
to do it, but I'm trying to see how does it... Where does the fun derive from that?
I think it's about thinking outside the box and doing something a little different. So it's not just a race. You know, Cancer Society is having a race. You're having a race for men. Men in heels. What is this about? Like, people would just go just to see. You know what I mean? You have to get them in. Yeah. You have to get them in. You know, like, nobody wanted to hear me talk about the smelter. When I talk about a big pot of fish broth, like, sure, I'll come down. You know, it has to have something to draw them in. What are you? Men in heels is a different thing. Cancer Society. I don't know. When I came back from Cuba in 2011, right? My mom, not my biological mom, but my mom, who is Gail Ali Bokas, was Gail Ali Bokas. When I came back from Cuba in July, I came back the Monday, and they did testing on her the Tuesday, the Wednesday, the Thursday, the Friday, and every single day they found cancer in a different part of her body. And by December, when I was meeting Castro during the CARICOM summit, she passed away. And it was really not an easy experience for me, because here you are, all positive, you know, oh my gosh, and this is this person who, a lot of my bubbliness, you see it in her. Yeah. You know, people would meet her and think that she was my blood, my biological mother, because same personality, yeah? And that one, I kind of retreated. And when Michael Alls passed away last year, because he passed on at the Vita's house in St. James.
One day after Gordon Delfood, I think they were bedmates there for some time.
Same day as Nelson Mandela, the Thursday. And the 5th of December. And, you know, and I was thinking to myself, you know, in this short space of time, after living 30 years, really, without having any experience with cancer, this kind of disrespectful, devastating loss, here I was now just trying to recover from it, from Grandpa Walter, for Auntie Gail, then Michael. You know, Chavez I really honestly believe he was going to come back from that. I don't know why. eternal optimist. And then I just think that at the end of the day, we have to take care of ourselves. Go and find out. Like, go. You know, it's knowledge. Just go. Get tested. Do the test. Just do it. If you know somebody who does not know, go and get tested. Find out. You know, men getting on in a certain age. Women. You know, go. Do a breast exam. Do a pap smear. Do it. It's Rosalino Street, Woodbrook. Just go. Pick up the phone. Call them. Cancer is really something that once you catch it in early detection really does save lives.
This is not a common occurrence here for me on this program, but I just felt that we could have gone for another hour because we've got to that point.
We've spoken for an hour?
We're out of time.
Okay.
Yeah, is this Dynamo? Priya Ganness-Nanton. Good.
Thank you.
Yes, well.